Flood, and for a second night we're holding our breath as emergency planners say rivers will peak overnight. Already tens of thousands of people in the Thames Valley have been affected by the rising water. The Cherwell, just one of the rivers to have burst its banks. Tonight the water is lapping at the very walls of some of Oxford's most historic buildings. Abingdon is also bracing itself for flooding tonight. Our reporter Emma Campbell is there now. Emma, what's happening there?
Good evening, Jerome. Well, all day here in Abingdon, people have been making preparations to try to protect their homes and businesses from the rapidly rising waters. Here in Abingdon is very high and the current is very strong. Water levels have gone up about 10 centimetres, that's about 4 inches since this time yesterday. And it's predicted to keep rising. Peak levels aren't expected until early tomorrow morning. Sandbags, of course, have been put out in their hundreds or possibly thousands today. The District Council here says that it's been an unprecedented day. They've deployed more sandbags than ever before, but there's still sandbags available if anybody needs them. Of course, it's also been a hugely busy day for Oxfordshire Fire and Rescue Service, an unprecedented operation for them too, and they say they've been stretched to the absolute limit. Later in the programme, I'll be talking to one of their representatives, but I do know already that they have dealt with 1,700 calls in the last 72 hours. They've rescued 120 people, and there are 19 floodwaters in place across Oxfordshire. 3 of those are severe. Mind you, while of course Abingdon still waits for the worst to come, West Oxfordshire is already battling against the floodwaters which have hit there already. Our reporter Alistair Fee has been out and about in West Oxfordshire, where many homes are already underwater, and he sent this report.
They stayed in their Stand Lake home for as long as it was safe, but tonight these elderly people were taken to the Kassam Stadium.
Had we left it too much longer and risk flood, that's absolutely great, and that'd be the best of all worlds.
As in so many other villages nearby, a relentless battle against the inevitable. A boat borrowed from a neighbour saves this family's possessions from waist-deep water near Northmoor.
We've managed to get most of the stuff up out of the water, but what we are worried about is it just continues to rise. We just don't know how much longer it's going to rise and how much more it's going to rise.
Everyone in Stand Lake has done their bit, from damming to refreshments.
The river Windrush is flowing very quickly right through ours, right through Sheila and David next door. So we've now worked very hard to put a line of sandbags as far as we can to try and stop the flow from directly opposite, which is coming relentlessly since about 4 o'clock this morning.
People fear the worst, but no one will admit defeat, and so they will continue doing everything they can to protect their homes. Alistair Fee, BBC South Today.
So that's the situation in West Oxfordshire today. Meanwhile, in Oxford itself, much as here in Abingdon, people are still waiting for the worst of the floodwater to hit. Stuart Tinworth has spent the day in Oxford, and this is his report.
The water level in Oxford's been rising quickly this afternoon, quicker than expected. In South Hinksey, a community spirit and hopes the sandbags will hold out. Bacon sandwiches were even handed out to those in need.
We anticipate the house is going to get wet. It's just how wet, really.
Yeah, 2003, it was a foot deep, and well, we expect it to go higher than that. That's why we are packed up to 2.5 foot with sandbags at our doors.
People living off the Abingdon Road, watching, waiting and preparing for the worst. Already water from the River Thames is seeping into people's gardens. The Environment Agency says things will peak at around 2:45 tomorrow morning.
It got like this a couple of years ago, and we didn't have the fire brigade knocking on the door talking to us about evacuation procedures, but they are doing that this time, so it looks like it may come indoors and we may have to sort of leave our houses.
They say it's going to get higher, and so we will be very afraid, because I'm on my own.
Advise people to prepare to be flooded, to take the furniture upstairs and to turn their electricity off, and think about moving out or informing us if they have vulnerable people in the houses that we can move out.
On the Botley Road, people making a break for it. These Russian visiting students have been forced out of their host family's flat. Others who were evacuated yesterday were hoping to return. There seems little chance of that.
It was very, very hard because I've got young children as well, and having to leave so quickly with no clothes and nothing is just a bit of a nightmare really, so yeah, not pleasant.
Here the water's not yet into people's homes. Whether that will still be the case tomorrow is very uncertain. Stuart Tinworth, BBC South Today, Oxford.
So that's the situation in Oxford, people still waiting anxiously for the worst to happen, much as they are here in Abingdon. In a moment, I'll be talking to Barry Russell from the Environment Agency, but first let's speak to David Etheridge from Oxfordshire Fire and Rescue. David, what kind of a day has it been for your crews out and about in the county?
Well, in actual fact, it's been a very busy 72 hours for us. As you mentioned earlier on, we've responded to over 1,700 calls for assistance. And I'm very proud to say that not only have we managed to work with all of the other agencies to respond to those, but to date we haven't had a report of one single injury to any member of public in Oxfordshire, and I think that's a significant achievement for everybody concerned.
How much has it been a case of the various different emergency services working together with a situation like this?
Well, clearly this is a multi-agency response. There's an awful lot of pre-planning goes into events like this. We've been working very closely with our colleagues in Thames Valley Police, the ambulance service, other Oxfordshire County Council departments and indeed the district councils to make sure that we've come together as one team to try and manage this as best as we possibly can, both in a reactive way under blue lights and also a proactive way by making sure that we can make contact with the residents that we felt would be affected by this flooding and getting timely personal advice to them when we can.
David Etheridge from Oxfordshire Fire and Rescue, thank you. Also here is Barry Russell from the Environment Agency. What's the latest prediction, Barry?
Well, the latest prediction is we're expecting the peak of the flood to be coming through here in Abingdon in the early hours tomorrow morning. It's risen overnight, we've seen that rise, and we're expecting that to pass through and go down further into areas of Berkshire and on down towards Reading.
Barry, thanks very much indeed. So still waiting here in Abingdon. There's definitely rain in the air and the situation is likely to change rapidly over the next 24 hours. The advice is to keep listening to local radio and watch out for any flood warnings.
Emma, for the moment, thanks very much indeed. Hundreds of homes in the Oxfordshire area have already been evacuated because of the flooding. The Kassam Stadium in Oxford is now an emergency refuge.
Thousands of people to spend the night elsewhere. Few chose to stay overnight at the stadium, but there is provision to look after hundreds of people in the conference area if the situation worsens.
Kassam Centre here is ideal for the numbers we were looking at. People from here, it depends what state the house is in. Eventually we'd have to look after them here. If they're in homeless because they can't use the house again, then the district councils look for accommodation for them.
The advice to people whose homes are at serious risk from flooding is to look for alternative places to stay as soon as possible and not risk getting caught out. Abigail Uden, BBC South Today.
Well, as we saw a little earlier, West Oxfordshire has been fighting to hold back the water. Alison Harper has spent the day in Standlake. We can join...
It's too much, but 6:45 a.m, that's the crucial time for the people here in Standlake.
Thanks a lot, Alison. Believe it or not, as Alison was saying, the next 24 hours may still be the most serious. Tonight there are 3 severe flood warnings in place, one for the River Och, the 2 others for the Thames from Ensham Lock to Little Whitnam. This is the highest level of warning and means, in the words of the Environment Agency, severe flooding is expected with an imminent danger to life and property, and people in those areas should act now. The emergency services have been meeting to discuss their strategy for the next 24 hours. A few moments ago, Oxfordshire's Chief Emergency Planner, John Kelly, told me what those plans are.
The next 24 hours from the County Council point of view and local authorities, we're looking to see if we're going to have any evacuees, particularly from the Abingdon Road in Oxford. That's our main priority, to see what the numbers are like. If it's 500 houses and we get all those people coming out there, that's a huge task for us. Fortunately, we've got the Kassam Stadium set by now, and we're waiting to see if we're going to have to put evacuees in there throughout the night.
Have you been given any idea about how serious the next few hours could prove?
Yes, we know that the water is peaking sort of through the night from midnight onwards through to the early hours of tomorrow morning. And as it peaks, of course, that's when we may see an extra number of people coming out. So we've got all our staff remaining there overnight, particularly as we've got already 50 people in the rest centre there.
And how are those people coping?
Doing very well. They're all elderly people out of elderly people's homes and things like that. Quite a shock to the system. They seem to be enjoying themselves, and we've actually got them in hotel rooms rather than sitting around the sort of concourse areas of the stadium.
And what about you and your teams? How are you coping? Because obviously this is demanding work and you're not getting much sleep.
No, that is a problem. My team's very small, as people probably know, so they are doing quite a lot of work, fairly long shifts. We've got a number of people out at our operations centre at Wood Eaton. I'm mainly down at the Kassam Centre, and it's the same for most of the response organisations, particularly the fire service, who have been working very hard throughout it, but we are coping at the moment.
Well, you all have our best wishes. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us this evening. Still to come in this evening's special edition of South Today, has house building on floodplains contributed to the crisis? We'll have the latest news for travellers and, of course,
is, first of all, be prepared. Don't leave it till the last minute. If there's any risk of your home being flooded, it's better to get out now than to try and do it in the small hours of the morning when the high levels are expected to hit. If you do need to leave your home, be sure to take any necessary medication with you. That's another good piece of advice. And details of your GP so that those are at hand if need be. For further information, you can watch the floodline, ring the floodline. That's the Environment Agency number 0845 988 1188, 0845 988 1188. A plea from the ambulance service, please don't ring 999 unless it's an absolute emergency. And of course, for the latest on the whole flooding situation, you can keep listening to your local radio station, BBC Radio Oxford, 95.2 FM, and we'll keep you updated throughout.
Emma, thank you very much indeed. Well, as ever, you, our viewers and listeners, have shared your experiences with us on radio, on television and online, and you've given us a vivid picture of what's been happening today.
At this moment, the waters are rising as we speak at the Lake Close. It's already fairly high. We are in the process of evacuating tenants from ground floor level. We have got sandbags around the property as best as possible to minimise the damage.
Mary is stranded on a narrow boat near Whitney.
Obviously, we don't know how long we're going to be here. We're running out of stores because we were actually on our way home from a week's holiday. So we're very, very low on food, water.
I've seen many bizarre things in the course of this flood saga, but one of the most bizarre was a four-wheel drive vehicle having to give way to a couple of canoes. I never thought I'd see that in my life.
I had 2 foot of water in my house, at least. Heartbreaking. What worries me most of all, lost mum and dad's photos and all things like that. You know, it's something you can't replace.
We might be facing an evacuation of some 1,500 people that we're going to take to the local football stadium of Oxford United, the Cassam Stadium in Oxford.
If you've got flooding entering either your residential home or a business, it's very unlikely at this time that we're going to be able to respond. We've received somewhere in the region of 1,500, 1,700 calls since Friday.
Thanks for all your contributions. Do keep them coming. That's just about it from us for now. We'll be back with a further update at 10:25 here on BBC One.